to her final resting place at her family's country home. Saturday was to bring the winsome smile of an early autumn sun to the extraordinary event of Princess Diana's funeral. Extraordinary in its mixture of the traditional and the modern. No funeral cortege of its kind in London has ever met with such cries of grief from people who would, on any other such occasion, have stood in respectful silence. Millions of people around the world saw the brilliant colours of the cortege on their television screens. At St James's Palace, the Princes William and Harry set out to walk behind the coffin with their father, Prince Charles, their grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, and their uncle, Earl Spencer, Diana's brother. A long walk, along the Mall, through Horse Guards Parade, and down Whitehall to Parliament Square and Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey, which has seen so many coronations, royal weddings and royal funerals over the centuries, was to see an unprecedented blending of solemn traditional ceremony and the modern way of celebrating a life and mourning the passing of it. It had been forecast as a unique occasion for a unique person, and so it was.
Goodbye, Rose, may you ever grow in our hearts. You are the great place where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Loveliness we've lost, those empty days without your smile. This torch we'll always carry for our nation's golden child. Even though we try, the truth brings us to tears. All our words cannot express the joy you brought us through the years. It seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps always fall here along England's greenest hills. The candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the greatest place to set where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, English road, from the country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Earl Spencer voiced his resentments of the photographers he holds responsible for his sister's death and obliquely the royal family's treatment of her. British public and private anguish at the cause of the death of its princess and the source of the unhappiness in her life was not to be suppressed by the formalities of her funeral.
The last time I saw Diana was on July the 1st, her birthday in London, when typically she was not in time to celebrate her special day with friends, but was guest of honor at a fundraising charity evening. She sparkled, of course, but I would rather cherish the days I spent with her in March, when she came to visit me and my children in our home in South Africa. I am proud of the fact that, apart from when she was on public display meeting President Mandela, we managed to contrive to stop the ever-present paparazzi from getting a single picture of her. That meant a lot to her. It is a tribute to her level-headedness and strength that despite the most bizarre life imaginable after her childhood, she remained intact, true to herself. There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this. A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you are steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead. I know you would have expected nothing less from us.
As Diana's coffin began its long, slow journey northwards, the crowds pressing around it showered it with flowers, so many that it was halted for a few moments on the motorway to clear them. Then it was gone from London, reaching Northamptonshire, the last stage of a funeral the likes of which has never been seen before in Britain and is unlikely to be seen again.
You lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hill. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Hours from her children, that the people's grief became unbearable. The long journey home on this early September morning had begun out of sight of the cameras as the casket at sunrise was gently placed on the gun carriage. At exactly 9:08, the funeral cortege moved slowly out of her former home at Kensington Palace at the start of the 4-mile route to Westminster Abbey. The coffin, draped in the royal standard and covered with wreaths from her family, lay on an oak board suspended above a 13-pounder gun which had seen service in the First World War. Drawn by members of the King's Troop Royal Artillery, flanked by 8 guardsmen of the Welsh Guards, the foot guards to the Sovereign maintained a slow and stately pace down South Carriage Drive. The muffled tenor bell at the Abbey marking the progress of the procession minute by minute. London had become a place of pilgrimage today. Those in the crowds that lined the route, at times 20 deep, were united in collective grief, paying their last respects and playing their part in a moment of history. Mostly they remembered her in absolute silence, a silence that enveloped the procession as it moved slowly through Hyde Park towards the Abbey. Most seemed numbed even after a week of mourning, unable to comprehend their loss. Outside the gates of the palace, the extended royal family, gathered together for the first time since the tragedy,